You know what I find very interesting is that you have people out here that will commit some of the biggest forms of theft that you could think of and then have the nerve to turn their noses up or turn their noses down at black people. Now, I just did a video, a couple of them. Well, one of them I did a video, the other I spoke about in the live stream when it comes to Brett Favre and the money that he was receiving for welfare in the state of Mississippi. And then you look at what's going on in Jackson and what's going on with that water and a host of other things. I've also talked about the welfare fraud that many PC people commit, especially in the Northeast. Now you have this situation right here, and this right here is a very, very big deal. So you can see the title right here. It says DOJ, or the Department of Justice, charges 47 with stealing $250 million from a pandemic food program for kids. Because the thing is, the welfare is supposed to be geared towards the kids. Like, those are really like the first priority, and then everybody else. The same thing with Brett Favre down in Mississippi, and the same with them welfare frauds in the Northeast. I mean, they're everywhere, but those are the ones that really stick out to me the most. Now you have this, and now it's on another level. 200, you gotta think, 47 people. And $250 million is how much they stole out of 47 people. They literally were living large if they got that much money out of a very small group. I'm going to go ahead and read this article, and it's a pretty lengthy one, so bear with me. I like lengthy articles because I think they can really touch on every point, or just about every point. And it was posted September 20th, 2022. As a matter of fact, what I'm reading from is not this website right here. I just got the screen capture from this website, but I'm actually reading the article from the Washington Post. The Justice Department charged 47 defendants Tuesday for allegedly defrauding a federal program that provided food for needy children during the pandemic, describing the scheme totaling nearly $250 million as the largest uncovered to date, targeting trillions in government aid. And I bet you none of them needed it. Federal prosecutors said the defendants, a network of individuals and organizations tied to Feeding Our Future, a nonprofit operating in Minnesota, in some cases obtained federal pandemic funds in the names of children who did not exist, and then spent that money on luxury cars, houses, and other personal purchases. To bilk the government, the Justice Department said the defendants relied on a complex web of shell companies and bribes. One participant allegedly created a list of fake children to whom it had supposedly served meals, populated with names generated from the website listofrandomnames.com. Others fabricated spreadsheets with invented ages or faked their invoices, all in pursuit of federal cash, the government charged. Once they had that money in hand, some of the defendants bought houses in Minnesota, resort property and real estate in Kenya and Turkey, luxury cars, commercial property, jewelry, and much more, according to Andrew M. Luger, the U.S. attorney for the District of Minnesota, who briefed reporters on the case Tuesday. The extent of the scheme, which siphoned away money meant for hungry children, led the Justice Department repeatedly to describe the theft as brazen. The acknowledgement underscored the immense challenge that federal prosecutors face to keep watch over the spending approved since the start of the pandemic, all while pursuing criminals who have treated the aid as a potential windfall. These indictments, alleging the largest pandemic relief fraud scheme charged to date, underscore the Department of Justice's sustained commitment to combating pandemic fraud and holding accountable those who perpetrate it, Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement. Feeding Our Future could not be reached for comment. A call to a phone number listed on this website could not be completed, and a lawyer representing the organization in related litigation did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Amy Bach, the nonprofit's founder and executive director, previously has denied wrongdoing. The federal food aid is a critical part of the roughly $5 trillion in emergency spending that Congress has adopted since 2020. The money helped rescue the economy from the worst crisis since the Great Depression, putting shots in millions of Americans' arms while helping workers find jobs and businesses stay afloat. But the money also opened the door to billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse, the extent of which is only the beginning to come to light. The Washington Post is exploring the program in a year-long investigation called the Woovit Money Trail. Targeting unemployment insurance, sophisticated criminals repeatedly stole the identities of innocent Americans, potentially draining much-needed jobless aid by more than $160 billion. Similar schemes targeted roughly $1 trillion in aid administered by the Small Business Administration, which provided loans and grants to businesses that did not exist, should have not qualified for help, or appeared to operate abroad. In other cases, inadequate federal oversight and lax program rules led to trouble. Many Republican-led states, for example, had tried to put their allotments under a $350 billion aid program toward political pet projects such as tax cuts and immigration crackdowns. Still another federal initiative to retrain veterans saw only 397 find new jobs, a far cry from what lawmakers hoped. The scheme alleged by the Justice Department on Tuesday centered on the federal child nutrition program administered by the Agricultural Department to provide free meals to children in lower income families. Why does that program sound so familiar? I'm going to let y'all hang on to that one, or y'all will probably leave that in the comment section. The program essentially operates as a vast ring of networks. Nonprofits and other organizations provide meals or contract with vendors to do so, and they reimbursed by states using money from federal government. In response to the pandemic, the U.S. government made it easier for a larger set of providers to participate in the child nutrition program and for those entities to supply meals at a wider array of locations. The tweaks aim to help more families access food, particularly when schools had shuttered and couldn't provide free or reduced price breakfast and lunch as usual. But the changes to federal law also may have paved the way for rampant abuse. With Feeding Our Future, prosecutors said the organization served as a middleman, as a sponsor, quote unquote. It submitted applications for new meal delivery sites to the state of Minnesota for participation in the federal program. It then oversaw meal distribution, sent the state claims for reimbursement, and remitted the federal funds back to its partners, according to the Justice Department. The nonprofit also collected administrative fees from the payments. Prosecutors alleged that from the powerful perch, the nonprofit's leader, Bach, ultimately oversaw a massive scheme to defraud carried out by sites under its sponsorship. One allegedly spanning dozens of individuals, some in her employ, and shell companies operating throughout the state. In total, Feeding Our Future opened more than 250 sites in Minnesota, according to the government. One of the entities her organization sponsored, known as ASA Limited, repeatedly submitted falsified records about the number of children it provided with free meals, according to the government. In September 2021, for example, one of the defendants tied to the firm allegedly populated a spreadsheet with a formula that generated a random number between 7 and 17 in the age column for thousands of children. Bach and Feeding Our Future knew the state's concerns were valid and that little of the federal child nutrition program funds disbursed by Feeding Our Future were used to feed children, the Justice Department alleged. In dozens of other instances, federal prosecutors say Bach failed to conduct proper oversight or lied about it, and then sought to deflect government regulators who tried to keep close watch over her. Minnesota state officials began investigating Feeding Our Future in 2020, after officials began to register concerns with the large number of meals that its sponsored sites had claimed to deliver. But an earlier attempt to deny payments of the organization ultimately failed, allowing its network to continue receiving federal aid. Facing new scrutiny, Bach at one point filed a lawsuit against the Minnesota Department of Education, which oversees the state's implementation of the meal program, accusing it of racial animus. The FBI, for its part, conducted several raids in January. On Tuesday, federal law enforcement officials stressed that they are continuing to probe the alleged fraud in Minnesota and other attempts to bilk money from a program meant to help hungry children. The defendants went to great lengths to exploit a program designed to feed underserved children in Minnesota amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, fraudulently diverting millions of dollars designated for the program for their own personal gain, FBI Director Christopher A. Wray told in a statement. Now I know that was a lot to take in or ingest right there. That was a lot that I just read, but I had to read every word of that. And I can honestly say, as devastating as this is, because for the kids that actually need it, I am not in the least bit surprised that this is happening. And I'm not even surprised that it's just now getting exposed. I actually believe they knew this was going on all along, but someone somewhere probably just said something, and now here we are. I mean, when you think about this, what's going on with Brett Favre, what's going on with those welfare fraud people, what's going on with the PPP loans, what's going on, what BLM did, are we really surprised? This is what I just read in the last 10 minutes is literally the fabric of America. For those who are listening from the outside who have no idea what America is like other than what you see on TV, this is just a glimpse, a little inside look into what the fabric of America is really like. And this is just a tease. So the theft and the stealing and the greed, no matter who gets hurt or who it benefits, who it shouldn't, it doesn't matter. This is America in a nutshell in some capacity. But speaking of BLM, and this is not me throwing a defense behind them, but I find it very interesting that when all of that stuff came out about BLM and Patrice Con Artist Colors, as I call her, and all those other people, even the guy that I just recently spoke about in the live stream that I recently did, the one who took like the $10 million or whatever and was spending it. It's interesting that they could not wait to put out into the news about that. And it should have been out there because you're messing with people's money and you're using it in the wrong way. But I find it interesting that they couldn't wait to put that out there into the media. But this one was staying real hush. And for all I know, what I just read to you may be the first time y'all have even heard about this. And I wouldn't be surprised by that. That's all by design. The mainstream media ain't going to really harp and stay on this, although they should. But see, they have to lean in on who they feel is going to give them more views. This can get you a lot of views too, but we know why they're not going to talk about it, because I'm almost certain we can pretty much guarantee who the majority, if not all, are behind this. If you want to do it by demographic. But yeah, like it's like $250 million is a lot of money when it comes from 47 people. And I'm almost inclined to believe that it might be more than 47. But the fact that 47 people totaled up $250 million in fraudulent finances and for money that was supposed to go to children, like you heard, like they literally kind of kicked in the door in the beginning of the article where they were saying they were going on this random names website to put in and fill in these random names of children that don't even exist. And that's another thing that they do. And that's actually something that is committed when it comes to voter fraud. They will put the names of random people that don't exist, or worse, they will put down the names of people who did exist but are no longer alive. They'll put a dead person's name there and say, oh, they voted, even though you can pull up the records and say, hold on, this person died like 5 years ago. Like, how in the world were they able to vote? So voter fraud is kind of similar with this when they're talking about when they're filling in these random names, because they do the same thing with that too. Like when they have to stuff the ballot box, they'll put in random names that people that don't exist or people that are dead. So either way, that vote shouldn't count. And they did the same thing here in order to siphon money from the government, which in a nutshell would be considered not only theft, but that would be welfare fraud. If I'm not mistaken, the same thing that Brett Favre did. And as far as I know, probably still doing, even though he's under scrutiny, but it's not like he's under fire. But they will find a way to call black people the welfare kings and queens. I don't know many black people that are pulling stuff off like this. I mean, the most we've heard about with black people doing something is with them PPP loans. But then again, that was a universal thing because a lot of people were doing it. And then that story I just recently did about that guy out in Nigeria who was defrauding the state of New York out of like $30 million. And they said he's going to face up to 621 years in prison if they catch him. And that still doesn't even touch this. I'm still stuck on the fact that it's a very small number of people that totaled all of this. They was living the life on someone else's dime. And then gonna have the nerve to tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Stop being lazy. And they're doing this. But again, I'm not surprised. I am not shocked. And I highly doubt that this would be the last time I speak on something such as this. And I almost overlooked this story because I had saw it, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna bypass it and move on to another one. But I'm glad that I circled back and looked into it some more. Because at the end of the day, the people that are really hurting the most are the kids. The kids are the ones that are hurting the most. Just like the people down in Jackson who are affected by that water are the ones hurting the most, but they don't care. That greed and that gluttony. You know, when they talk about the seven deadly sins, those two right there, especially that greed, is one that they love the most because that's probably one of the ones that they sin the most with. Hell, how do you think that this establishment that we're living in got established? Greed. Why do you think that racial wealth gap is still the way that it is? Again, greed. So they don't care who they take from, who they steal from. Remember, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick down in Texas during the height of the pandemic said that he would sacrifice his own family in order to get the economy back on track. Again, greed. He told himself, I will never forget when he said that. But I'm going to go ahead and end the video on that note. Y'all let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. If the bell for any reason is not working for you when the notification goes out, I upload my videos in a Premiere style format. So you can click the notify me button in the bottom left or bottom right of the thumbnail and the notification should come that way. All the links will be down in the description. I will talk to you in the next one.